Okay, welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. And I'm back with Pixie. And Pixie and I are going to talk about boundaries today, which we can't wait to talk about because we both love this topic. Do we not, Pixie?
I love this topic. It's
I do.
the number one tool in my toolbox
I
for
know.
recovery.
I know. And to me, I think of it too as the number one tool for creating the life you want. It's like
Right,
everything's a boundary. Everything becomes a boundary, right? Yeah. Yeah.
right. I think the holdup on this whole concept was trying to figure out what we want. Once you figure out what you want and what you desire and what you need, and you have the courage to say, yeah, I'm going to ask for it,
Yeah.
boundaries are the implement tool.
I know. I know.
Yeah,
And yeah, I know what I want now, and now I'm going to start organizing my life to in order to have this feeling, to experience these experiences, to have these kind of relationships. Like they all become like one after another boundary
right.
choices to create new boundaries, right? So, in my book, Live Your Inner Power and Courageous Woman, the journal and the book, the self help book. We talk about the inner power wheel. Pixie knows the inner power wheel well with me. And the sixth practice in there is create healthy, flexible boundaries, because one of the ways that we can rely on developing a really, really great life is by creating healthy, flexible boundaries. I love the idea of healthy, flexible, Pixie, because I feel like a lot of people want to say good or bad boundaries or right or wrong. And we get stuck in this paradigm of, a value system. And it's really not about that. It's really about what's healthy for you, what creates a healthy life, and then having flexibility around it because we grow and change and life
Yeah.
changes and fluxes and flows, right?
Yeah, I don't know why the word boundary always suggests, a wall or
Yeah.
something non-penetrable or something. And maybe there should be another word. I don't know, but I think when you understand that they are porous and they are flexing all the time as we flex,
Yep. Yep.
it becomes easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can move them when we want to move them, like a boundary. I guess in my mind, I always kind of saw it as a fence, a movable fence. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like that image too. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so Laurel, I was thinking about this. You know, when I first heard the word, I got scared. Like it's scary, and I've been working hard in the last several years to figure out what is it that is that scary component of that word.
yeah, yeah.
And I have my own ideas on this, but
Well,
what comes up for you when I mention that first?
yeah. So what came up for me first was I think when I first heard boundaries or first learned about it, I think I felt relieved. But then the thought of actually doing the boundary work became the scary part
Right.
because I had to assert myself. And for me, at the beginning of my beautiful work, that was scary stuff, asserting myself.
Yeah, voicing what you want is
Yeah.
hard, and then for me, it's scary because I was focused on the outcome. So like, what if they don't? What if I hurt their feelings? What if they don't understand? And they're all codependent stupidities. It's like, well, what if it's not my side of the street?
Mhm.
I think the breakthrough for me on my fear was when I realized that it isn't about the outcome. Actually, the beauty and the strength is the fact that I said it,
Yeah.
that I set the boundary, that I had the courage to work through what I want,
Yeah.
what I desire, what I need, and then ask for it.
Yeah.
right there,
I
I
know.
learned that that's success.
That's
And
success,
then
and that's courage. That's a lot of
that's
courage.
courage. And whatever happens after that, I can't control anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't control what they're going to feel, what they're going to think, what they're going to do. I
Yeah.
can only control the fact that I stepped up
Yeah.
and expressed my needs and boundary.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the beauty right there.
Yeah. And I know, Pixie, we've talked about recognizing, that we're highly sensitive people. We already know we're highly conscious people. I tend to work with people that generally are described that way, highly sensitive and conscious. And when we're setting a boundary and when we get good at boundary setting, what happens for us is oftentimes when you're highly sensitive, you are afraid of hurting the other person, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The bad thing is that you start to feel like you want to avoid hurting their feelings by not
Right.
telling the truth, and thinking that you're saving somebody from hurt. But if you for me, what I learned was, or what I came to believe and acknowledge was, if I'm not telling somebody the truth, ultimately I'm betraying them as well as myself, and so I'm
Yep.
delivering a different kind of hurt in the long run. And so nobody avoids the pain of truth. Truth is
Right.
truth, and it can be painful at times. And so I think, the beautiful walk or the beautiful way is, how do you just tell the truth gracefully and compassionately, and go forth, right? And
Right.
you can still
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, the work is actually all the work is actually before the delivery, but
Yeah,
the
it's
delivery is important too. And you're, I mean, you're just such an expert at this, but the delivery needs to be reflective of how you feel inside, which is calm. you
yeah,
know the delivery needs to be gentle. It
yeah,
needs to be simple. It needs to be direct. It needs to be unapologetic. It needs to be without nauseating justifications.
yeah, yeah.
But to get there and deliver it in such an effective communication style, you have to kind of do the work beforehand.
And you got to practice. It doesn't always come out perfect the first times.
No.
I didn't always do it great. It took a while to get really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're emotionally not ready, then you're going to flounder, and you're going to put in all these shoulds, or you're going to put in all these like
Live-
other words that you don't really mean. And so the work is actually figuring out truly, what is it that you want, what is it that you desire, and what are you asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but practicing, Laurel, I think it was you that taught me that. I mean, I on those difficult conversations,
Mhm.
like the ones that are going to really trigger some
Yeah.
core fears and
Yeah.
coping strategies. I practice.
Yeah.
I actually write a script.
Yeah, yeah, and I say them out loud. Sometimes I'll sit in my meditation space and go through a conversation in my mind. Sometimes I'll even speak quietly to myself about how I want to say it, practice my tone of voice, because I know that my voice can get really excited. I can get really intense and
Yeah.
really
Oh,
passionate about things, and it doesn't always come off as soft and kind. It comes
no.
off as kind of intimidating, and I don't mean to be that way, and I don't see it or feel it that way, but it can, for the person receiving, can feel overwhelmed by it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, do I relate to that. Totally resonate with that. I think it takes a lot of preparation that you can deliver in. I'm going to say from your heart space.
Yeah.
Creating a boundary from the head, I know then I start getting analytical, and I start getting defensive, and my voice has a higher pitch, and I start talking faster. But if I'm setting a boundary from the heart space, my heart, of my true desire and authenticity, I tend to be calmer. I tend to be more gentle. I have more space between my words.
That's so,
So
that was
it's,
a great example. I mean, I feel like you really, even as you were speaking, like you could feel yourself going into heart space more, so I think the listener could even get the feeling of, how it feels when you're speaking from heart space. It feels different than when you're in head space and you're trying to get some point across and you're worried about them understanding and getting it.
yeah,
It's like,
I know.
it's so
You
different
get
than,
frantic.
yeah.
The other, I was thinking, so that, you know, remembering how, take pride in the fact that you're setting a boundary. I think that's important. Take pride in the courage that you've mustered up, and the self-love that you're exemplifying, because you are taking care of you and your needs. Remembering all that, and then also kind of knowing that, this whole negative thing's going to try to get you, like guilt, or they're going to think I'm selfish, or what if I'm asking for too much? What if they can't do it? Those are kind of like what I call the things that are coming in from that past mind chatter, and just
It's the old beliefs that are
the
speaking,
old beliefs.
yeah,
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 the old beliefs
yeah.
that
I'm
you
not worth
shouldn't.
it. And
Yeah, I'm not worth it. I'm being selfish.
yeah,
I don't deserve it.
yeah, they're more important.
It's always been this way.
Yeah,
They've always been like this.
yeah.
Letting them off the hook. Oh well, that's just Jane.
Yeah,
That's the way Jane is.
that's right.
Yeah, everybody knows Jane.
Yeah,
So making excuses and just avoiding it. Boy, those are some of the
yeah.
big challenges.
And
So.
they're big pain points that we have to, work through over time. And one boundary at a time strengthens our ability to do the next one and do the next one and do the next one well. And so always I remind people, this is a work in progress, setting good, healthy, flexible boundaries over time, getting better at it, using your voice the way you want to. All of that comes with practice, practice, practice. And as Pixie said, the more preparation that goes into it, oftentimes that can really serve you in terms of saying it, getting it out the way you want to get it out, and doing.
Well, and starting simple, like
Yeah.
start with an easy one.
Yeah.
you
Start
know?
with the easy one and an easy person, right? And then work
Yeah,
your way up.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Don't choose your narcissistic, manipulating, controlling mother first. No.
That's right. That's right. So, how do we know when we need to set a boundary? Pixie and I were talking about this before we got onto the podcast, and we have like a kind of a pretty succinct way to describe it. So, Pixie, want to like dig in there a little bit? How do we know when we need to set a boundary?
How do we know we have to send one, or how do we
How do
do
we
it?
know? How do we know when
Well,
we need to?
well, this was a big aha moment for me, because some are just so obvious. You feel violated. You feel violated, and it's obvious. Man, I need to set a boundary. But it really became clear to me that anytime that you're feeling or exemplifying a negative behavior, it's pretty much a flag for a boundary. And I think when it hit me is when somebody said, even when you're being critical, then there's something that's not set boundary wise in your life. And I remember having a conflict with a neighbor, and it doesn't matter what the conflict was, but ironically, it was about a fence, and I found myself being negative all the time, talking and this, and that, and this and that. And that went on for like several days. And then I heard this statement that any negative criticism, feeling, anything requires a boundary. And it hit me in spades. And I went and I had a pretty strong one-on-one conversation that required a boundary with my neighbor. So anytime you even find yourself gossiping or
Oh God,
You
yeah.
know,
Judging
it's
thoughts. I mean, I always think of like internal boundaries and external boundaries. You know, you can have judging thoughts and judging words. These are great examples of internal boundaries versus external boundaries. So, you know, like having judging thoughts, we can actually start to put boundaries around those and say, I don't want to have a judging thought. I am not going to entertain that kind of thinking, you know, and how do I switch my thinking? And oftentimes with judging thoughts, it's because you want something to be different. And so my default for like my internal boundary with judging thinking is stop the judging thinking, and then what do I want instead? What do I want to really be have happening in this situation?
right.
And my thoughts
Boy, you
have a
know,
positive train of thought, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're just bring up such a key point, and actually, it's probably the first and most important is to deal with those internal boundaries
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like Bernard Shaw said, every battle is fought within first.
Mhm.
So usually
That's right.
it's,
Beautiful work, beautiful
that,
life. The inner work
that,
makes such a difference. It creates our
yeah.
outer experience ultimately, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of times boundary probably comes up 5, 6, 7 times in my day now
Yeah.
because it's just prevalent, the
Yeah.
need for them in
Oh,
all situations to bring, you know, to bring you fulfillment.
yeah. Yeah. And create alignment. You know, I think it's the other idea of you know, I love to talk about alignment, and boundaries allow us to align with what we want, with our value system, to be in relationships the way that we want to be. You know, we aligned with who we say we are, you know, like it's these boundaries that we're talking about. And boundaries are choices of words. They're are the way we behave. They're ultimately so they're these small little acts that add up to kind of a bigger boundary of how you're
Oh,
creating your life, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think I learned it from you, Laurel, many, many years ago. And I think it's relevant. You know, we're kind of following up the codependent
Mhm.
podcast
Yeah.
with boundaries, and that's because, you know, codependency is so related to disordered boundaries, and um, people people wonder how that is, and it ends up being prevalent no matter what kind of boundary issue you have. Codependency is related to almost too rigid boundaries sometimes.
Yeah. Or none.
Yeah, like if you're really controlling codependent, and uh, you can have some very rigid, inflexible boundaries that make you feel isolated. You know, you might be fiercely independent and never ask for anything you want, and leads to gross distrust, mistrust, and you end up feeling
Yeah.
really isolated. And then codependence at the same time, the same person, the same day can have, you know, a loose boundary.
Yeah.
And that could be with people pleasing. You know, you're just all over the place. You'll do anything
Yeah.
so you don't hurt them, so they don't feel bad. You don't disappoint them, and so your boundaries are just kind of way too loose. And what ends up happening is you end up feeling disappointed or rejected or, you
Yeah.
know, abandoned. So I think I learned it from you that there's, you know, it's just you're not like one way or the other. You
Right. Right. You can be all over the place with boundaries. And every boundary, you know, speaking of being all over the place, it's like every boundary in every relationship, every situation requires its own unique set of boundaries, you know, like
yeah,
what you do with some people, you're going to do differently with other people depending on how much trust you have and respect and where they are in your bullseye, your relationship bullseye, and all kinds of
right.
stuff. So it's like that's why I love the term healthy, flexible boundaries, because we need to be flexible. We need to just show up. What is this required and where we are right now, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. You
Um,
know, the other thing too that just came up for me, Laurel, I think a challenge, you know, we were talking about challenges because I think it's, you know, it's what puts us off, right? Um, I think what happens with uh, ineffective boundaries is we make too many assumptions. We think people know how we feel. We think we think they read our minds.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe the best thing to do, especially as we start getting better and better at boundaries, is just assume they know nothing. Nothing.
Yep.
I mean, almost,
Yep.
Basic level.
Yeah. And you can even say that, I'm just going to assume that we're starting from scratch here, and let's just talk about it as if we don't know anything, and we're having a conversation and learning some things,
Yeah.
I want to make sure before we talk about how to work with boundaries, I want to make sure I mention the word anger, because we talked a little bit about, having that. I love that you were talking about any kind of negative or heavy energy probably requires, looking at a new boundary to alleviate that problem. And anger is one of our best. I always think of anger. Anger's got a bad rap in our culture, because it's been misused, it's been mishandled, it isn't responded to well individually. And so people just think anger is a bad thing. But anger is a good thing. Anger in the human being's experience is the trigger that lets us know that a boundary is needed.
Right.
And so if we just use it for that purpose, what happens is we feel anger. We go, what's going on here? What do I need to change or do or say? And how do I need to address it? And if I do it and the outcome is done, the anger dissipates. It's done. It's over. We don't carry any leftover anger. It's
right.
It's complete, right? It's kind of makes a complete cycle. So I just want to say that for listeners, because I feel like culturally, we all need to get a better relationship with anger, and we all need to talk about it and think about it and address it in new ways, and we don't want to accept people misusing their anger, because that's not a good thing. Being violent, being withdrawing, being, critical, being mean, like none of these things are good ways to handle anger. But anger, it doesn't mean that anger is a bad emotion. It just means that people aren't handling it well, and we need to develop our
right. Yeah, we weren't taught how to manage anger.
No.
Very, very well.
Not at all,
Yeah.
So when we want to set a boundary, let's get into that a little bit, Pixie, because I really want to give our listeners some skills today, some ideas, as things to try. Yeah. So
I always look at it as kind of a step process. That might reflect kind of my analytical engineering background, but I always try to figure out
but Pixie, I just want to say, that's one of the reasons that we have such rich conversations too, and why I love talking about it, and why I wanted you to come on the podcast with me, is because of the way that you think about it all, and you take in so much information on these topics. You have these ways of expressing and sharing that's really useful. And so I love that, you have kind of a step-by-step process. So listeners, if you have a pen and paper and you want to take some notes, this would be a good time.
Well, I guess the first thing that I do is say, what's the issue?
Right.
What is it right now?
Like simple. What's the situation? No judgment around it, just what it is, right?
Yeah, no judgment, no why, just what is the what, and so it's just identifying the issue right now and trying to communicate that issue. And there's a caveat here, because it's so hard. It sounds so easy. Oh, just identify the issue right now. Well, so many of us get in a present situation, and we can never tease that apart from the, prior 60 years that led up to the now. Okay. And so something happens in the now, and we trigger the past. And it reminds us of somebody that did the same thing, or somebody we hated or disliked. It reminds us of when we had shame. It reminds us of when we felt unworthy, whatever and that's why I try to emphasize just what is the issue right now.
Right.
Um,
This is very
and
empowering because it kind of clears away some of that other stuff. Yeah.
yeah, don't bring in the mind and those
Yeah.
old tapes that are going to bring in all the, oh my gosh, here it goes again. This is going to happen forever now. You better stop all this. This is going to ruin your life. No.
Yeah.
What is the issue right now?
Yeah.
So it's really important to emphasize the now.
Yeah.
And then quickly, after you figure out what it is that you're seeing, right, is okay, so how are you feeling? Now, this is hard for a codependent because codependents have just gotten in touch with their feelings. And so you have to figure out what is it that you're feeling in this situation because of whatever's happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I like to go to why am I feeling? Like, what value system am I violating in my own core that's making me feel this way?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm ready. Now. I've done the work, and it's like, now I'm ready to ask for what I want. Yeah. And then let's kind of figure out a plan so that I can get what I want, but you can also do it. And then maybe think about a consequence. So anyway, that's the process I go through. And we could go through an example, Laurel, of maybe a small one first.
Yeah. Let's start with a small one, and then maybe we'll do a little bit bigger one after that, just to give folks a chance to like put it into practice with us, right? Yeah.
Right.
So we love the one of, leaving the toothpaste cap on the counter and off the toothpaste tube, right? How about that?
Or underwear on the floor, in the bedroom.
Underwear on the floor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, horrible.
I know. Yeah. I know. So those are simple. They're simple, but these are like life things that we all live with, that have our own little examples of, that really do add up to, quality of relationship with other people. So they build
on each other, don't they? They get resentment. You get to the point where that toothpaste becomes
that's right. If you don't watch out. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So if you went through my process, I guess it would be, the issue is, okay, hon, I see that the cap of the toothpaste is off again, in the sink, and it looks like it's kind of spilling over on the sink. So that makes me kind of feel violated because I don't know, the sink's messed up. It's a common shared space. We both use the sink, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel compulsive. Like I have to clean this up, and I feel a little resentment that I didn't leave it off. And so that's kind of how I feel. And then I would go to my value system. Well, why do I feel this way? Well, I like organization. I like clean. I like orderly. It's just my value system. I feel comfortable in an organized setting. So the reason I do that, Laurel, is because it's a check on why I'm asking for what I'm asking. If it fits my value system and it makes sense, I can say to myself, well, I'm not asking for too much. I deserve this. This is it's okay to want order and organization and clean. That's a value that I honor, and that's okay. So I always like to go to that value.
Another way to think of that for listeners is the phrase, "It's important to me because," and then fill in the blank.
Yeah, that's good.
Zero in on that. Yeah,
that's right. I feel this way because I value organized space. I value organization. I value clean. And so then once you feel pretty good about what the issue is and how you're feeling and what you value, then I go ahead and I just ask, hey, do you mind just putting the cap on the toothpaste after you use it every time so that it doesn't spill out? And I don't know what the agreement and plan would be on that, except that
Yeah, I think that when you're in that situation, I think that point is where you kind of, there's almost like a little bit of a pause and saying, you know, do you think that you could do that? Would that be okay?
Right,
How do you feel about me asking for that? Like,
right. And do you know why you don't? Is it just,
is there a reason you're not doing that?
yeah, just,
Right? Yeah.
are you distracted? Are you in a hurry? Is there anything that can be done to make it easier? I mean, maybe it'd be easier if there was a cop by it and you could
Yeah.
stick it, whatever. There might
Yeah.
be some obvious, and I guess that would be part of the agreement and plan. Hey,
Yeah.
if we had such and such by the sink, would it be easier to think about the cap? Or
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because I think ultimately, like, especially the world we live in today, like I was just like I had these images floating across my brain as I was thinking about our example of, how there's even stand-up tubes of toothpaste now, where you can just have a little pump, so the cap is
right,
never off the toothpaste, right? Ultimately, or whatever. Like, there's ways to have solutions for these things if
that's right.
it comes to
Yeah,
that place. You know what I mean? Where I can't remember to do that. It's one of those things. I'm just not paying attention. I'm only half awake and I'm not going to, well, then buy that kind of toothpaste so that it's,
right. Is
whatever.
there is there
Yeah.
an easy solution that you can
Yeah.
think of, and then you get ownership?
Yeah.
I have to say, so before boundaries, the old Pixie, uh, that didn't follow this process would have gone into the bathroom and
Mhm.
would have said, "Oh my God, I can't believe this. You left the toothpaste cap off again. You always do that. I can't even believe that you have the disrespect, constant disrespect on me." And I don't, my mother used to do that too, all the time, and so,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's so
And
many violations.
right. And also, I think one of the things I love that you gave that example, and I'm going to give an example too after that, because I feel like it also helps us identify, what is important and why it's such a big deal to us, right? So if you let yourself think those thoughts and don't take them out of your mouth, just keep them and look at them, like it makes you realize, wow, this is really important to me because I had a whole history of cleaning up after my family and I don't want to be that person anymore, right? Like, you can actually add that to the conversation. It becomes
Yeah.
constructive, right? You can say,
Boy, if you're that aware,
yeah,
to
but
be able
you
to
can,
do that, that
yeah,
would that
right,
would build compassion
yeah, yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. For me, like my old pattern would have been just, I would go in there, I'd just put it on again, and then I'd be in a little bit of a tiff because I'm the one always picking up and you never do it and you don't care. And and so now I'm, a little miffed and whatever. And what does that do? That doesn't do anything. That's just a relationships destroyer.
Yeah, you would have gone on and put the cap back on.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
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 And
So,
then maybe thrown in a little eye rolling and passive
yeah,
aggression
exactly. Passive
on
aggressive,
yeah,
resentment, poisoning myself, poisoning the
yeah.
relationship.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like this boundary work is challenging work. It challenges us because it calls us into looking at, our own patterns and habits of how we've been handling conflict and expressing what we want and all of that. And we get good at it with practice. And that's why having like, just like you shared here, a step-by-step process
Right.
really useful because how are you going to change a new pattern? We always change a new pattern or habit by doing a new one. That's how we change it. We don't
And
and
over and over and over and over.
doing
Yeah.
it, doing it, and doing it until it's a new habit or pattern.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
I think too we make it too complex.
yeah,
We bring in the past, we bring in triggers, we
yeah,
transfer the issue to another problem, whatever. If we just, when we thought about boundaries, if we just stuck to the issue and
yeah,
stuck to the now,
yeah, yeah.
I think it would it would be a whole lot simpler.
It would be a lot simpler, and it also
Yeah.
helps us slowly but surely, like, improve the relationship over time. So, for instance, if you're feeling disrespected in a relationship because somebody's not listening to you or not doing what you're asking or whatever, then that's an issue to be addressed in in a separate kind of way, right? It's like not lumping everything all together, not saying you disrespect me because you don't put the toothpaste tube cap on, but probably it's because you're not listening or you don't care about what I want, like it's like how do we, and we'll get better at self-expression and asking and all of these things through practicing and making all of these things smaller steps along the way, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I just thought of when you were talking to, sometimes I think we forget to affirm the person. I
Yes,
mean,
that's
it's
big.
it's huge.
It's
And
big.
you don't want to be patronizing. You don't want to go, "Oh my gosh, honey, thanks so much. You put the cap on the toothpaste." But you want to just say, "Hey, you know what? I noticed you put the cap on the toothpaste, and I'm really thankful that you listened to me and took me serious.
Yeah, I
That
know.
you heard me. I was seen, I was heard, and I just want to thank you for taking that time."
Yeah, yeah. My
And I think that goes a long way. That motivates the person to do it again. I mean, everybody loves affirmation.
Absolutely. And I think we love to be appreciated. It's
Right.
a little different. There's like a gratitude practice and appreciation practice almost have like this subtle difference. And appreciation is almost a more personal, heartfelt expression of how you're experiencing it. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
being grateful or gratitude or whatever is kind of more like I don't know. It's like a more basic, but this appreciation becomes more personal. Like I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate how you're showing up. I appreciate that tone of voice you use with me when I'm upset. It really feels good and reassuring or whatever. Being just taking the time to weave that into the relationship is so powerful. And it's kind of like creating the beautiful boundaries almost, like
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's great. That's
So
great.
that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Maybe we should, maybe take us through the process on a harder one.
Yeah,
Like a,
we're going to do it. Let's try it and let's try to do it kind of quickly because I want to feel like we're wrapping up, but I also want people to be able to see this almost like as a pretty simple process to start with, right?
right.
So let's do the being late
Okay. It
example. Okay.
stays, yeah, the
Yeah,
process stays the same
it does.
re- regardless of the magnitude of the issue
Yeah,
or even the longevity of the issue. Because if the process is in the now,
yeah,
doesn't matter how big it is. It
right.
just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So take us through the issue. The situation is somebody's always late.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's say the issue is I'm sitting at the restaurant and we had agreed on 5 o'clock and it's 5:15. So the person comes. So the issue is easy to identify, right? Hey, I'm looking at my watch. You're 15 minutes late. Um, and then that really makes me feel like I don't matter. I'm not a priority. I feel like a little anxious. I'm a little worried that there was something wrong. I'm a little scared. So the value is that um, I believe in two-way mutually respected relationships that have a two-way communication, two-way agreement. And so when that becomes one way or violated, I feel like I've lost the integrity of my value system. That's mostly in my head, all of that.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I'm ready to say, hey, I'm could you please make sure that you honor the time that we're supposed to meet? And if you can't, for any kind of like emergency or unexpected conflict, can you make sure you text me so that I know? And does that sound doable? Here's your agreement and plan. This is a good example of a repeat offender kind of one, though, Laurel, because usually this kind of behavior is repeated. A lot of people are procrastinators and late, and there's a whole reason for all that. So this is one that I think I would take step 6 is to kind of think through a possible consequence. Like, hey, if this happens again, I'm just gonna, after 15 minutes, I'm just gonna kind of pick up my bag and kind of leave. And I want you to know that.
Yeah. I feel like that's really important, because I feel like if we don't have that kind of boundary for ourselves, we keep, especially if it's a repeat experience with somebody, it's then we end up being angry, and we are still waiting for them to change. And if they're not changing, the next step is just accept they're not going to change. You're either going to be in the relationship or you're not. If you're going to be in the relationship, then make it clear, hey, I'm going to wait 10 minutes. If you're not there, I'm moving on. I've got a bunch of stuff I need to get done, because I think it's that, I know for me, my days are full. I have a lot of things I love to do. I could keep myself busy all day long doing things that I like to do now. So I don't want to just hang around waiting, half an hour for somebody because they just didn't pay attention to the time. Somehow that ends up feeling disrespectful to me. So yeah, I think it's this whole idea of just being able to have that conversation, being able to say that, and it's like, it's okay if you feel like you're not going to be able to change. That's fine. I just need you to know, for me, if we're going to make a date and you're not here after 10 minutes, I'm moving on. I got other stuff I'm going to do. And if you're okay with that, we'll just keep going on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Laurel, because you freed yourself in that. You freed yourself from resentment. You freed yourself from the struggle of trying to change somebody. There really is kind of a beauty and acceptance of that particular, acceptance of a particular behavior is an option, is what you've just described.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a make or break. If you don't do this, I'm going to break up with you. Yeah. This is all right.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot, that you've just portrayed an ability to accept that particular a boundary and behavior, and still carry on in that relationship in a healthy way. With honoring all the other good stuff happening.
It's true. And it's interesting, I think, in relationships today, Pixie, and then we're going to wrap up because I know we're going long here, but this idea of, most of us have relationships that we like and enjoy, and plenty of them. And it's kind of like over time, it starts to whittle down, like, which are the ones that are most important. And so that's almost a way of fleshing out how important is that relationship. You know what I mean? If you say you're going to be here and I say I'm leaving after 10 minutes, one of us, it's going to be, it's a relationship that's going to end up lasting. Or look, we're going to say we make a date and then we never see each other because you don't show up on time and I leave.
That's right. That's right. The amount of energy and the degree of boundaries is going to depend on whether they're sitting in the front row of your life theater or whether they're up in the mezzanine section. And it's like, okay, I can't see you up there anyway, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you so much, Pixie, for spending time again with me today. I think that was a really fruitful conversation, hopefully really helpful for people, and lots of good thoughts on boundaries. We probably want to come back and do another boundaries one sometime, because I feel like we could really dish on this one for quite a while.
I think so. Yeah, we'll do some talking and thinking about it. It's always fun. Thanks, Laurel.
Thanks, Pixie.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.